Good morning, everyone. Jerry here, Justina. And thanks very much for coming to the talk. So I'm a return attendee for the conference. I was here last year. And I thought it was a really good conference. So thanks very much for coming again. So we work for Vinted. For those of you who don't know, Vinted is a C2C marketplace. Secondhand is better for the climate, but also for wallets. But I wanted to give you some context on what we look at specifically before going in. So Vinted is the marketplace that we work for a particular part of Vinted, the shipping business unit called Vinted 4. So if you live in Paris, and I think most people here kind of have seen the lockers around the shops. So that's VintedGo carrier, but VintedGo also works with many partners on the ground. So for example, you have Chronopost, you have Lapus, for example, as well, and many others. So we work with network partners. And a key piece of what we look at is cost. So we want to make sure that when carriers build VintedGo, they build the right amount of money, let's say. So you as a user, you would imagine yourself buying an item of Vinted. A label is generated. Vinted sends an API call to the carrier, and then the carrier then sends Vinted an invoice. So we look at estimated costs, we had expectation based on the contractual prices. And then we also have the actual costs that come in from the carriers themselves. So this is really the piece, and our mission is just to make sure that in the data sets that Justina and I look at, we try to make sure that Vinted gets the right amount, but if they don't, then we make sure that we try to get the money back from the carriers such that our users get to enjoy a cheaper shipping rate, but also we try to lower the transaction cost. And that's generally the business model of Vinted. But when we talk about actual cost then, they come in all shapes, forms, and sizes. Any type of files, what have you name it. And actually last week, Justina was just discussing this case where the carrier sent us a CSV file. There was one column called surcharge, and then they signed a new schema with surcharges with address. So anything can really happen when it comes to different carriers. But what that really means for us is that we are primarily a financial reporting and analysis keys. So it's very important for us to test properly. Vinted migrated to dbt about a year and a half ago. So when we first started, we had a couple of assumptions that we had. So we tested with out of the box test with dbt, and I think most of you might be familiar with dbt. So let's say like the accepted value test, a question is true, not now, you need all those kind of things. But we realized that we were too strict in our assumptions. I think when we first started, we were initially very optimistic about the data quality that we had. So we wanted to test everything and try to make sure that we find everything that we can have. But even with making some of them warnings, we caused a lot of pipeline failure, so that was not really fun. And 3 months later, we decided to adapt the way that we were testing. So that's when we came out with the risk-based testing framework, which we've now been doing for about a year ago, for a year now. And I think it also lends very nicely to what Joe was saying just now about data engineers needing to be mentally flexible, right? Like kind of need to iterate, we kind of need to look at what we're doing. And that is essentially what we've been doing for the past year. So I know Christmas is coming, but this is how our deck used to look like. It was not very fun. Basically, we will wake you up in the morning on Saturdays, on Sundays, and having to send error messages to people. So not very fun, and also not really inspiring confidence. I think we were testing, we were a bit overzealous. We wanted to make sure that when we were testing, we wanted to find out the errors before people could come to us. But I think the problem is essentially this, like, although we were super watchful of this, it was not nice to have the bad data messages as warning messages. This was like our wake up, good morning text for like a year, and it was not fun. And I think maybe some of you can also relate to this. There was something that I saw recently from Sync as well. I just want to share. It's not a promotional material, but nevertheless, I felt like I related to this, and maybe some of you in the room will also relate to this as well. When it comes to testing, some of you might relate to some of the issues. I think for Justina and I, we kind of looked at this and we thought, okay, for us, right now, one of the things that we think about is how to make our debugging a bit faster, and also how to make sure that we give the right amount of alerts. So not too many, not too little, but just enough such that people get the information. And yeah, so also in terms of resolution time, I was joking, Justina, that the company that you guys used to work for is not represented here. Because we were definitely more than 7 days. I think it's kind of gotten faster than now, but nevertheless, I think at Vinted, for example, we try to make sure that we resolve the issues within the bid. And I think that's the challenge, or that's the problem that we're all trying to solve. Like I see a couple of analytics engineers, data analysts, data engineer in the role. I think that's also something that you think about as well. So that's why I'm wondering, just share some of the examples of things that we've done. But when it comes to implementing a testing strategy, I'm sure all of us in the room has some form of testing in taste. And so therefore, I thought it was really interesting to share the change management model. So something that I kind of like looking at, which is this is one example, the trans-theoretical model of change. So we started out thinking, okay, we're doing the right thing. We're really testing super a lot. So we were in the pre-contentation phase, basically what I like to call ignorance. So you think that there's no problem with it at all. But then after waking up to this and sort of like having dreamed about tags in your seat, it's not very fun. So then we start to think about contentation. We wrote a concept paper about it. We circulated it internally to get feedback. We interneted it. And then we are now thankfully in the maintenance stage. But the reality of this, and something that I want to just share about this, is that it's circular. So I think while we are now enjoying a bit of peace in our lives again, there is a possibility of relax. And also this is where I think the iterative part starts. But why I'm sharing this is because I think it's a nice way to visualize how you're going to get buy-in from stakeholders when you're implementing this change. And that's the context that I want to set. We first had to create the problem, or rather make the problem more visible. And then that's where we got more buy-in to has time to spend on this. But also in terms of deciding what to test, the information quality framework, there's a paper that was written a long time ago, but as the fundamentals of data engineering, I think they are timeless as well. When it comes to financial reporting data, something that we look at a lot is accuracy, completeness, and timeliness. And I think these are also concepts that are borrowed from financial reporting as well. So letting on there, deciding what to test, there's also another concept of materiality. And this comes in from my training as an accountant before becoming a data person. Materiality is basically just what is the threshold that you need to set such that when you exceed this threshold, it will make a difference in how someone perceives the information. But that also guides, in some sense, what exactly you want to test. If, let's say, you have like one row that has a null value and you're going to set a not null and it's going to break your pipeline, that's not something that you really want. But if you're going to have duplicates, this is then going to be a problem, and maybe that it's material. So our mission then, when reviving this, was to achieve maximum test confidence without slowing down or breaking our critical deployment pipeline. And so this is it. Like we looked at two axes. One is in terms of frequency, how frequent the problem was occurring, but also in terms of the impact. And in the case where it was high impact, for example, the cases where there were duplicates in the joining keys, we just say avoid. And what that means is the pipeline doesn't build. Okay? And when it comes to things that are low impact and high frequency, what we try to do is we still test it. We want it to fail, or we don't want it to break the deck. So what we did was to push the test later on to keep the deck as lean as possible. And when it came to low impact and low frequency, we just accepted it. And we said, okay, we're not going to have any alerts in the deck. We're just going to allow it to run, and we're going to monitor it later. But if you have some examples of what this looks like. So as I was saying, join keys, these are the ones that are really high impact because they're going to cause duplicates. Believe it or not, even at Vinted, we also have input accounts from Google Sheets. So I know that's like the bane of everybody's the existence everybody doesn't really like. As much as possible, we can have admin tools for everything, do everything through CDC. That's nice, but yeah, the reality is that some things are implemented as a quick solution. So naturally, the errors that come from Google Sheets when people do many inputs is really high. So we try to test that as often as we can. But then on the other side of the spectrum, when we look at things like uncategorized costs, we have different cost descriptions that come from the carriers, and we try to map them to a standardized mapping so we can analyze it. If that's missing, we say it's fine. Like, someone has a feedback loop, they won't look at it, and we're not going to really focus so much on it. So conceptualizing that, for those of you who are familiar with DBT again, how this sort of goes is that, what we try to do is to come up with something that is as vanilla as possible. So we use kegs. So nothing too groundbreaking, but let's say it's grounded in a bit of a framework that we introduce, and it's something that we do that makes it easy for people to see. Like when they see this, it's very obvious what we had, right? So in the sense where we look at the first one, our IDs, which is like a primary key, we really don't want it to be duplicated. And if there's something that is downstream, which is going to be a problem at the fields of fact invoice rules, you don't want it to build. So that's the avoid. Basically, doesn't run. Okay, and then if we had something that's more a reporting key, so let's say the country code, and we say, okay, like, is this going to be low impact? Because let's say, for example, if there's a new country code, in terms of just a new route, it's likely to be not so impactful because the route is new, it's going to be small. So then we say it's low impact, but it happens at a high frequency, so then we test it daily because we want to be aware. Sometimes the backend data, you believe it or not, so you see it's FR and UK. Sometimes backend data sends us GB as well. So like UK and GB, and that's a little bit annoying. So we want to make sure that we catch this and we know how to deal with it. But it's this. So when it comes to the deck, I kind of like simplified this a little bit. And this was where we started off. So we had something equivalent to a DBT build. Like we use Cosmos to put out all the models into different tasks, but nevertheless, you can understand it as a DBT build. All the tests ran as part of the game pipeline, as well as all the joins. But the idea is kind of this. So if we can exclude some tests from running, this sort of helps the deck complete faster. And that's what we did. So we tried to make the build a bit leaner in the morning. And we only kept the join key tests to make sure that you don't get duplicates or high sort of tests that are there. And all the other tests ran outside of our SRO. So we had a 7 a.m. UTC timeline, and we just made it run outside. And all the high frequency, high impact tests are running throughout the day. It's super helpful. And believe me, being able to see this at 5 p.m. and being able to tell someone about it is a lot better than looking at it at 7 a.m. in the morning when I wake up. So maybe this is something that you might want to also consider in terms of how it's done. Justina will share some examples with us.
Thank you. Yeah, so as we are now testing our data quite often, but without breaking the attack, we believe this will increase the trust to our data completeness and consistency. It reduces the stress of data test breaks before some important deadlines, reporting deadlines, such as month-end close, and this testing, the rapid testing, basically reduces the stress for the deadlines. That's what it means. Of course, we are also implementing this system of notifications and dedication of the data issue resolution task to some responsible person. So this ensures the swift reaction of the stakeholders and reduces a lot of back and forth between the data teams and the stakeholders, as they can independently work on it themselves, or if it's related to some files that get uploaded, they could choose to, contact the third-party providers of that data, or do some manual adjustments, or even ask analytics engineers to implement some rules. And now, not all of this has to be dealt immediately. It's we really look into the materiality of things. So this really helps to prioritize, for people to prioritize their work better, and of course empowers our stakeholders to really collaborate to the data quality that we have. There's a few examples that we wanted to show. The one on the left is something that we had a year ago. So probably for those who are not familiar with Airflow, and basically for data consumers, it wouldn't say much that the test failed. And so what happened there? What's the materiality of it? If they open the log link, probably it would show a confirmation that wouldn't tell much to them. And we also had a Google Sheet with all the test results printed out. But after having this process for some time, were noticed, and after gathering the feedback from his stakeholders, we noticed that this didn't really flag the true importance and materiality of the issues. So what we have now is what you see on the right. So there's a message saying what file has been tested, the exact owner tag, not the whole team, but the person responsible for that. We also have a message which helps to evaluate the materiality of the issue, what the materiality is missing. It answers the question how this contributes to our data completeness and accuracy. And there's a message helping to resolve the issue, recommending how to deal with it. And we can see that the responsible person reacted in a timely manner, because this test is running immediately after they upload the pilot. So they already have a sense what is going on. And all of these alerts are not only alerts, they are also decision-making messages. So it should answer all of these questions: what, where, which, who, when, and how, to really reduce the friction and to empower the people who are working with the data issues to actually start working on the resolution itself, but not spend too much time investigating where it came from. So it really reduces the possibility of bad data entering the downstream systems. And I gave a few examples how it impacts our stakeholders, but what I also wanted to talk about how it impacted us as analytics engineers. So what we've noticed that it actually improved our focus time, even though we get notified multiple times per day. But this became more like a routine, because in the morning we deal with the most important issues, and throughout the day we get notified by some smaller ones. Let's say somebody edited the Google sheet and forgot to enter the join key, and we just deal with them one by one. But it's now like more proactive than react. So. Also, we've been considering what comes next. We could, how we could improve the recognition, for example. So there could be some color coding implemented to really show the importance of these tests failing. Some automation, such as automatic ticket creation, to really improve the tracking and test management. Maybe automatic pull requests could be created to. So for some smaller issue, so we just need to review it and merge it to the production. And also some verification areas, some charts of the people who are the best responders to improve the engagement and motivation. So test smarter, not harder. I think that should be considered as a change management process. It involves a lot of people, a lot of smaller processes into it, and it usually should be seen as a bigger picture. Of course, materiality, evaluating materiality helped us much to end, as well as answering the questions what to test or what not to test. Of course, a risk-based approach to evaluate the impact and the frequency. The example that there was this example in one of Jeremy's slides, showing the screenshot how we communicated to our stakeholders that the data will be late, and it was because of our DAB broke because of this one column which had a test on, but it wasn't really involved into some crucial logic downstream, so probably shouldn't break the whole bag and make us try on everything yet. Work on it. Maybe it could be Delson, newsletter-based. So, and all of these alerts could be seen as a decision-making messages to really reduce the friction, spend time dealing with the issue, not really trying to understand where it came from, digging into it. too much. And of course, ship that and testing what made us test smarter and learn and without balancing the whole pipeline.